and welcome to another episode of Space in Africa's webinar series titled Creating Effective Countermeasures Against Space Debris in African Countries. My name is Mustafa Idarawumi, a senior analyst at Space in Africa, and I'm truly honored to be your host today. So our focus today is on the rising threat of space debris, which is no longer confined to just theoretical discussions or isolated incidents. Its impact is now being felt globally, and many incidents have been recorded in Africa. In the last 2 years or so, there have been confirmed reports in Kenya, Uganda, Ethiopia. There's also been possible sightings in countries like South Africa. And the immediate risk posed by falling debris extend beyond just space infrastructure. The effect is now being felt across communities in different African countries and even across industries. In the last 2 months, we've heard reports from countries like South Africa, where airlines are about to reroute or even reschedule some of their flights because they got information about impending space debris in their projected flight plan. So today, our discussion will revolve around 3 thematic areas. So the first part would be to assess the impact of the current and future effects of space debris on African space infrastructure and also African communities. Also, we are going to discuss international best practices and other strategies that are used to mitigate space debris that are also suitable for like the African context. Then the last one is we are also going to look at it from the legal framework. So we are going to understand the legal framework such as the Outer Space Treaty and also the Liability Convention. Why we do that, we just need to understand the responsibilities of these foreign actors. What are the responsibilities on foreign actors when a space debris from their infrastructure falls in different African countries? And what are the legal avenues available to African countries in the event of damage to their communities or infrastructures? But first, let me introduce our esteemed panel of speakers today. First, I have Minister Yeshurun Ali Mayawu. He's the State Minister of ICT and Digital Economy Sector at the Ministry of Innovation and Technology, Ethiopia. Thank you for joining us, sir. And I also have Dr. Doreen Agaba. She's the technical lead at the Department of Aeronautics and Space Science in Uganda. Thank you for joining us now. So before we begin, let me just give a quick rundown of how today's event is going to unfold. So first, I'll post some critical questions to our speakers just to delve into different thematic areas. And afterwards, we are going to take some questions from the audience. So at this point, I'd like to take a very big thank you to everyone that has joined us on today's episode. Thank you for sticking with us all through last year. And we promise to bring you more relatable topics to ensure that everyone is kept abreast of all happenings in the African space ecosystem. So if you have any questions along the line, please just drop them in the Q&A box and we'll take as much as we can during the Q&A section. So to set the scene, Dr. Doreen, I'm going to direct the first question to you. Can you hear me, ma'am? Oh, okay. So following...
Yes, please. Yes, please.
Okay. So following the 2023 space debris incident in Uganda, I want you to give us like an introduction. Can you walk us through the process that unfolds after a space debris has been reported to your department of ministry? What typically happens when such occurrence happens?
Thank you, Mustafa. Thank you to Space in Africa for hosting such discussions. They're very critical to the growth of the sector. I am Agaba Doreen, calling in from here, Uganda. I head the Aeronautics and Space Science Bureau under the Ministry of Science, Technology and Innovation. So you may be aware that generally speaking, the space industry is young on the continent, and that is true for Uganda as well. So this meant that we had not put up the framework within the space sector to manage such an event as of last year. So the Sector for Security and Defense was called upon to take over the event because this has security and defense implications. And obviously, the first action is to ascertain that indeed this is an object coming out of outer space. And so the Uganda Forensic University had to take it on to do a forensic analysis and generate a report to confirm the above with both internal and external help. Once that is completed, what follows is a legal process because within the forensic report, it states where the object, to which entity or company or organization the object possibly belongs to. And so what follows is a legal discussion. I will not delve into what took place within this legal discussion between our sector for defense and security and the potential owner of this object because they have not deemed it fit to provide a public statement. Once they do, it will be made public. But generally speaking, there is need to come up with more frameworks, something that is very elaborate, since this is not just something that, an object that is threatening the life of people and infrastructure here on Earth, but also posing more hazards that perhaps we have not yet even identified. So thank you for that question.
Thank you very much, Ma. Minister Alimayem, the next question is to you, sir. So we also had reports from Ethiopia about a space debris that fell into the nation. So I want to ask you some critical questions about it. The first part is the ministry sent out a press release confirming that indeed that space debris actually fell into the country, right? But we've had several reports, one from the Ethiopian Space Science Society, ESS, and some other reports that have not been confirmed yet by the ministry or by the agency in charge of space operations in Ethiopia. So we want to know firsthand from you, sir, what can you tell us about this space debris that fell into Ethiopia? Do you have any details that you can tell us right now? You're muted, sir.
Okay, thank you, Mustafa, and Space in Africa, and also the panelists and participants of this webinar. By the way, the space debris that suspected to be fall on the Ethiopian territory, it's not yet confirmed, but actually it's not fell in Ethiopian territory. It is a space debris actually, but still now it's not confirmed what type of space object it is, from where it come, and what is its purpose. The Space Science Society that released the news is from a source from SATCAT, which is a spaceflight intelligence exchange, which is provided by the Kian Space Group. But actually, we are not confirmed that it is from Chinese space object. Now we are closely working with the Chinese Space Agency for verification and what it is, whether it is the Chinese object or not. So we are working. We are still under exploration. So it's not yet confirmed. What I can say is it's not yet confirmed, but we are still working on it. And also it is not in the territory of Ethiopia, it's outside of Ethiopia, but though it's passed through the Ethiopian territory.
All right. Thank you, sir. My next question to you, Dr. Agaba. So when you were answering my question the other time, you made mention of some of the challenges that could come up in terms of identifying where the material actually came from, the owner and all of that. So what were the immediate technical challenges that you encountered in identifying and managing this particular debris? And how does this experience, shape your department's approach to such issues? I know that you've mentioned that we still have to do more frameworks in terms of managing it, but what were some of those challenges that you faced, and how have that shaped your approach to, such occurrences happening again in the future?
Thank you. The first challenge, as mentioned by my colleague, the Honorable Minister, is actually confirming that this is a debris object. The second one is confirming the source of this object, which requires a specialized team of forensic experts. The third one is information sharing. So if you suspect 3 sources, are you able to confirm one will own the object? The third one was the duration. There is a timeline within which you can actually put in this legal case. And once that timeline passes, this entire case becomes null and void. It's just something you can report on, or you have learned some lessons from, but there is a timeline that the international community has placed on this investigation of space debris objects. There is also the multifaceted risk investigation. Space objects can range from different parts of a spacecraft or a launch, a part of a launch vehicle. So the analyzing the risk, whether it is immediate or in the future, can be also a bit complex. Is it just a piece of metal? Is it a piece of metal with some material that it has come with? So it ranges from hardware to a biohazard. And so the risk assessment is not just immediate. You have to make an analysis on what that means in the near future. There was also the matter of compensation. So if it has landed on people's infrastructure, has it harmed someone? Has it destroyed property? And what does that mean for the locals? There is a fear among people when a strange object that the international community is talking about falls within their neighborhood, and that is something also the local community has to deal with. And you ask yourself, should we provide information beforehand on the possibility of this, or it is also a delicate matter to manage? So a number of lessons come out of this. Fortunately, or I could say something that is of advantage, is that we were still drafting our regulation, and that meant that this became a factor that is clearly indicated in our, or at least catered for, whether now or in the future. So space debris, both on ground, once it makes it through the Earth's atmosphere, or even in space, is now something of critical attention within a regulation framework and within our intersector discussions, because this calls for different sectors to come together and discuss. And we are noticing that it is taking on a trend where we will indeed have to start borrowing certain frameworks from perhaps communities or industries such as the carbon economy, to ensure that both on ground and in space, we are taking into account this risk in our designs, in our plans, the financial implication, both on ground and in space. The risk factors increase. So there have been immense lessons for us that range from management and just information management locally. So that is it.
All right. Thank you very much, ma'am. Honorable Minister, the next question is to you, sir. Is Ethiopia exploring any legal avenues or policy updates to address the liabilities or even strengthen its position in the global discourse on space debris mitigation?
Okay, thank you. We have been actively developing space capabilities and policies in recent years, especially since 2016. So the government established Ethiopian Space Science Technology Institute to advance the space science research and infrastructure development. Then, after 2 years of the establishment of the Ethiopian Space Science Technology Institute, then the Council of Ministers approved Ethiopian space policy, which is aiming to utilize space technologies for peaceful purposes and to address economic and social challenges. While the existing policy framework underscores the Ethiopian commitment for peaceful use of utilization, specific legal measures or policy updates which are focusing on space debris mitigation have not been prominently featured in available public documents in Ethiopia. However, the recent events that prompt further attention to this issue, especially the one which happened on January 10, 2025, a fast-moving object, which possibly is space debris or meteors, which was observed in which passed through Ethiopia. So the Space Science Technology Institute and the Ministry of Innovation and Technology has been investigating the incident with other partner countries. So this incident highlights the potential risk of space debris, and also it influenced us to consider strengthening our policies and legal frameworks to address challenges which are related to these issues. So to alleviate such kinds of problems, we are now currently working. But in addition to the space policy, the Ethiopian space policy, we have different initiatives that we are working with partners. Like we are a member of the COPUS and the IAU, and also we are among the African nations that signed the Outer Space Treaty of 1967, which demonstrated our commitment to the international space governance. And also we align our approach with international legal frameworks. We are working towards that to align our international legal frameworks, particularly on the Outer Space Treaty and also the space debris mitigation guidelines which was established by the UN COPUS. And these guidelines promote responsible space activities and advocate for minimizing debris. Additionally, as a member of the African Union, we adhere to the African Space Policy and Strategy, which was enacted in 2016, which especially emphasizes sustainable and responsible space utilization, including the space debris that we are talking now. So with this all, we are working, but we are yet to introduce specific national legislation on space debris, but we have active participation in international forums and adherence to the global norms. So these are the initiations and the works that we are doing, and also the recent happening has strengthened and made us out to be aware and to work on the policy and legal issues related to space debris and other related issues regarding the space research and development. Thank
you. Thank you, sir. Dr. Agaba, so my next question to you, you've mentioned some of the technical details and also how a country, or like in this case, Uganda, have gone about, trying to identify and also work out the details in terms of the space debris that fell into the country. So my next question is on the focus of technical capability now. So how equipped would you say Uganda is? And even maybe you can broaden that out to like the entire continent. So how would you say Uganda or maybe even Africa is in terms of the technology and also the expertise to actually monitor and respond to space debris events? And the second part of it would be, what are some of those areas that you think requires immediate attention for improvement?
Thank you for that. Uganda and Africa as a whole has a vibrant forensic industry. So is not in itself lacking. Slightly adding another layer, saying the forensics to focus on objects that perhaps were not an original point of focus. The second one is providing a framework or even just a procedure within a department on what to expect. I know that space debris has different types of objects, different characteristics. It is unpredictable. The models that we were using to predict have also showed that they are underestimating the debris that is out there and expected to come within our Earth's atmosphere. So there are many uncertainties just speaking about space debris itself, but putting that, keeping that as a constant, there is need then to have some more information provided to our forensics communities so that they are able to anticipate and have a framework on how they would deal with such an event. As someone stated in the chat as well, since this is something that we expect to be happening and it could cause some sort of discomfort to the communities, there is need for that information dissemination. Of course, bearing in mind that you have to be cautious of maybe the person you're claiming or the organization you're claiming to be the owner of the space debris. It is not that simple. Concerning, so specialized training is in a sense of enhancing forensics. Investigation is in a sense of putting up a framework both within the country. And so when that happens, let's assume that has happened to a good extent, then there is need for a communication channel between the potential sources in terms of organizations and people that have launched, or companies that have launched. There's a need for an information sort of channel between any potential space debris that has gone through the Earth's atmosphere and a discussion, a basis for a discussion without really pointing fingers and without any implication. So there is need for that information gathering, or information accessibility with the potential sources of space debris to ascertain and also confirm that indeed this is our object. So there's a need for ownership. It's not just a one-ended discussion of I have received an object. It's just my job to figure out where it's coming from and what it's doing. There's need for that collaboration, that collaboration is going well. On the continent as well, we need to come up with a community. It could be of experts and enthusiasts, but there's need for a platform where these such informal discussions continue, and so there is need for a community where you set up a discussion, a platform, a group of enthusiasts, I don't know, space debris watchers, something of that category that will also be able to plug in into the international community and create a form of debris intelligence, if you can call it that. Yeah, so that is what I would propose. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ma. Honorable Minister, so I'm going to pose the same question to you, sir. So in Ethiopia, so what would you say are the technological investments or upgrades that needs to happen to strengthen the ability of the country to detect, to track, and respond to future debris incidents?
Okay, thank you. In Ethiopia, we currently working on different initiatives to strengthen the ability to detect and track, and also to respond on future space debris occurrences. One is at Intoto Observatory and Research Center, which is under Space Science and Geospatial Institute. There is an ongoing project to install the asteroid and satellite tracking system. We are working on it to install it. And the other initiative is the 1 meter telescope. It is old one, but regarding the first one, the asteroid and satellite tracking system, this initiative is part of ESON, International Scientific Optical Network. It is the global collaboration that is focused on tracking space debris using ground-based optical telescopes. And this initiative, this ESON network provides valuable data for collision avoidance and mitigation, and effectively serving as a global watchdog for space debris. So this is one initiative, one project that we are working on. The other one is the two 1 meter telescopes that are at Intoto Observatory Center, which is going to be integrated with African observation networks. That is led by African Astronomical Society. So this is the other work that we are doing. And also there are efforts underway to connect this telescope, the two 1 meter telescope, which is led by the African Astronomical Society. And the project is African Integrated Observation System, which is a network that is linking facilities in African regions, especially the partners from African countries are Morocco, Algeria, Ethiopia, South Africa, Burkina Faso are part of this African integrated observation system. So we are working here. This integration aims to enhance the real-time detection and also early warning systems for space debris, especially for transient astronomical events like the one I mentioned. So these initiatives show that we have a commitment. We have a commitment to strengthen our capability and also to develop the infrastructure for space monitoring, contributing to both regionally and globally to mitigating the effects of space debris. So these are some of the initiatives that we are doing here. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Dr. Doreen, so this will be the last question before we move into the Q&A segment. So you've mentioned the fact that Africans need to also collaborate more, just because majority of the space program across the continent are still in their infancy, if I can use that word. So what would you say is the best approach that African nations can use to leverage maybe regional partnerships across different blocks, or even continentally as a whole continent? What would you say are some of those ways or methods or models that we can use to collectively measure and mitigate space debris, especially from countries that have been able to do this, such as Uganda and Ethiopia and some other countries that have been able to do this or that are doing this currently? How can they bridge that knowledge gap to other countries that have not had to work on something like that before, or maybe have not even started their operation?
Yeah. Usually the best place to start is researching about a topic. And so a regional R&D project would be good, which then comes together on a continental level. And this project would the nature of debris from before to now. I have myself done some of this research, but in a way that it is continuous. You're coming up with models, statistical models, analytical models. You're setting up really DIY labs where you get similar materials and see how they would react upon collision. And you're exchanging some of these results and understanding this risk, because you have to have a futuristic mindset. We may think we understand space debris today as we do, but there is a big likelihood that we haven't really comprehended this particular risk as we should. So yes, a regional collaborative project would be a good place to start, with support from governmental bodies. So that would be ministries or departments or related agencies. This is not just limited to space agencies. It is really a cross-sectoral risk. Although space agencies would be able to take lead and understand, or space programs, and because they understand the risk much more. Such a project would go much further than debris mitigation and debris intelligence, or setting up a community to understand, or providing guidance on how this should be dealt with, or creating alerts on what is expected. It would really evolve into technology that should avert this, because once again, outer space is a natural resource. It is a resource that is available to all of us, and it is our responsibility to make sure that it is optimally used and that we are responsible in the way we are using it. So that is what I would propose as a starting point.
All right. Thank you. So Honorable Minister, you also mentioned the need for more African nations. You made mention of your country, for example, having to join some of the international space forum or fora where discussions are being held about space debris mitigation and awareness. But in your opinion, just looking at the fact that many African nations are just starting their space program, and they might not have the same level of technical capabilities as some others. So what would you say is the best way for Africans to actually assert their voice in international forums, just to have a platform to also advocate for equitable responsibility and also mitigation strategies?
Thank you. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Am I here? Hello?
Yes, sir, I can hear you.
Can you hear me? You can hear
Yes,
me.
sir. Yes.
We African nations are just entering to the space era, but we are expected to gain from it, and we have to compete with other spacefaring nations. We have to be competitive. We have to compete. We have to work. We have to build our capacity. We have to strengthen our infrastructure and human resource capacity, and also we have to come to the ground to reap the benefits of space exploration. So for that, our continent, Africa, can assert its voice in international forums on space debris mitigation, specifically by adopting a multifaceted approach that emphasizes equity, collaboration, and strategic policy advocacy. So, having said this, I would like to raise some points to give emphasis on that. The first one is strengthening regional coordination and policy development. What to mean is the African Union and regional organizations like African Space Agency should develop a unified stance on space debris policies and ensure a strong collective voice in global forums. And also, we have to establish continental space sustainability frameworks that can help shape national policies while aligning with the global best practices. The second point will be active participation in international space governance. That is very important. So African nations should push for revisions in international space treaties for our sake. So advocating for greater accountability from major spacefaring nations and private entities that contribute to space debris proliferation. So that, and also strong engagement with institutions like the Corpus and the ITU is very important. Africa's concern is also heard. And the third point that I want to emphasize is the legal and liability frameworks that African nations should collectively advocate for an updated liability regime that is ensuring the space powers that are accountable to damage caused by the space debris over developing nations, and the African nations or the African for a global fund or space debris mitigation, where major spacefaring nations contribute to a cleanup efforts and compensate affected nations. So this must be given due attention. The fourth point may be investing in indigenous space technology and research. We have a number of space interests. So mitigation efforts, for example, by using the radar networks or observational satellite networks, which are developed and launched in collaboration with partner countries, and also using the AI-based modeling can help us provide African nations with evidence-based claims in international discussions. And also we have to work with universities and public sectors and international organizations that can drive local capacity building. The fifth point, maybe collaborations with South-South and global collaborations, like collaboration with other emerging space nations in Asia and Latin America to form a bloc advocating for fair space sustainability policies, and also strengthening ties with global entities like ESA, European Space Agency, Roscosmos, and NASA, which can help us bring financial and technical support to Africa-led initiatives. The last point, maybe we have to have public diplomacy and awareness. So the African nations should use diplomatic channels, medias, and global advocacy platforms to raise awareness about the disproportionate risk faced by developing nations due to the effect of space debris. And also we must engage in high-profile discussions at summits like UN General Assembly, G20, and the BRICS meeting that can bring our visibility and our voices to be heard. So by combining these strategies, Africa can play a more assertive role in shaping the global space sustainability agenda, and also ensure that developing nations are not left behind, not left bearing the disproportionate risks of space debris. That is my viewpoint. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. So we'll take some questions from the audience. Dr. Dorian, so I'll pose the first question to you. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. So I think we can start with this. You've mentioned something regarding this before, but I think people still wanted to explain this further. So how exactly is the owner of a space debris identified? Did you get that? So
Yes,
whatever
yes,
you can share on the process. Thank you.
Truthfully, this is a question that we cannot exhaust in this webinar. Space debris is complex. It has a wide range of objects, both physical and potential objects. of them is some of the objects are easy without the help of the suspected owner. A lot depends on your forensic capabilities in terms of expertise, equipment, and infrastructure. So I do not know how to provide a one answer that would fit all of those parameters, other than to say that this is a discussion we ought to have on a technical level in a format that allows us to discuss this in much more detail. Yeah, that is what I can say.
Okay. So just before I go to the minister, let me just ask you this one. We're talking about the legal frameworks that govern, how space debris can actually be, the identification of space debris, and also what should happen or what should follow when once an object has been identified. So the liability convention, the rescue agreement, and all of that. So the first question is, someone was asking why I mean Uganda, is not a party, or you've not ratified the liability convention, which would generally mean that there's just so much that you can do in terms of after you've identified the space debris, in terms of what you can do to get. So I know the one that happened in Uganda, for instance, it affected some buildings too, right? So the question is, why has Uganda not ratified that agreement? I don't know if you have an answer to that, or maybe an update as to when that will be done.
I will link this to another phenomenon that would be similar, which is the carbon resources management. It should not be that only when you have become signatory to certain international treaties or regulations or guidelines, that is when such help is given. It should not be so. The decision to assent, sign, ratify a treaty is much more than just considering an event. It is something that a nation takes seriously, and they consider not just the current situation, but also the future plans of the country. So it should not be reduced to an event, and the help that that particular segment of the liability convention, for example, would, or the benefits that it would offer. So that's why you find that there are two ways of dealing with carbon resources. There is that which is through treaties and internationally agreed upon principles, but then there's also an alternative, because either way, whether someone has ratified or signed or ascended to a treaty or agreed to a certain norm, they still need the support that is being offered, because it's highly unlikely that this debris is theirs. So just out of what we call humanness, we the Bantu, we call it that Ubuntu, being human, it mandates that such support should have alternative means of being offered, and swiftly, even out of the confines of a treaty. It should not be a sort of bargaining chip, because nations don't take signing treaties lightly. That is what I would say.
All right, thank you, ma'am. So there's a question to you, sir. Can you hear me? I mean, sir, can you hear me, sir? Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yes.
Okay. So the question to you is regarding collaborative efforts between African countries. So the question goes thus, are there any collaborative projects that are being planned by the East African community for the implementation of maybe like a workshop or training program, just to help other countries, and just to help them to be able to do similar stuff that the Ethiopia is doing right now, in terms of identification and also necessary next steps after identification has been done.
Okay. Thank you very much. Yeah, there are initiatives that the East African community is actively engaging in different collaborative projects to strengthen the regional expertise in space exploration and to develop the satellite infrastructure aimed at improving the communication networks, capacity building. So the East African community has developed a space science technology strategy, which aims to create and promote integrated outer space program to foster an innovative, competitive science, technology, and innovation sector. And also, additionally, the Egyptian Space Agency has launched the African Development Satellite Initiative that is offering training programs to engineers and specialists from various African countries, including those in the eastern part of Africa. So in that program, basic space technology and satellite systems workshop and trainings are being held. Further, the Earth observation, the EO Africa initiative is the other one, and providing space capabilities, training capacities, and there are different face-to-face courses, online courses, the capacity building actually, and also there are different initiatives to develop the connectivity to alleviate the connectivity problems. So these are the different initiatives that the East African community are working together.
All right. Thank you very much. So I don't know who sent this question in, but unfortunately, our speaker from Kenya was unavoidably absent, but I can provide an update onto the question that was raised. The last update from the Kenya Space Agency was that they're still trying to identify the space debris, the object. And once that is done, they are going to share that in a timely fashion with the audience, with the entire public community. So please just stay abreast and keep looking forward to their social media handles as to when they are done identifying the object. So that's the latest from Kenya. So Dr. Doreen, the last question that I would ask you, this is okay, so how are space debris handled in terms of storage? So I'm thinking the question is like, once you've identified ownership, like once you be able to ascertain the ownership of a particular object, like what do you do with the object? Do you store it? Is it like, what exactly happens to that object?
That is an interesting question, Mustafa. It depends on what has come out of the investigation, because every investigation is unique. Even the timelines that it takes is different. So what comes out of the investigation determines where the object is going to be stored, who will be the custodian of the object. For example, if there wasn't, say, a discussion between the owner, the potential owner, suspected owner, and the country where the object fell, then you don't expect any exchange. So every case, so this is on a case-by-case basis, is unique. And what comes out of the investigation, how collaborative the suspected company organization who is supposed to be the owner, how collaborative it is also determines the end point. So it is on a case-by-case basis. And if the case is not completed, definitely it is within the hands of the investigating entity. If the case has been concluded, it depends on how the case has been concluded. Yes, so once again, I would say this is on a case-by-case basis. And once we have that opportunity to have a more technical discussion on this matter, we can go through different options that would arise in such a case. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. So that would be our last question for this session. And just to reiterate some of the points that our speakers have made during the course of this program, there are a couple of things that have to happen once an object has been identified to be a potential space object that has fell into a particular country. There's going to be the identification. There's also going to be the communication once the space object has been identified to a particular party or country. Then the communication would also follow suit, where they would sit together and iron out the details in terms of what needs to happen. And like Dr. Dorin rightly mentioned, these things has to be taken on case-by-case basis, because what happens with a case A would generally be different from what happens with another one. The results of a space debris falling into a nation where nothing was affected would be entirely different from space debris falling into another country where maybe households were affected, or God forbid, maybe someone was killed or something like that. So it has to be taken on a case-by-case basis. And if you want to speak more about this with our speakers, please, you can do that with them. They are very approachable people. So you can reach out to any of them, and you can have follow-up conversations if you have any other questions. But once again, I'd like to say a very big thank you to our speakers, Dr. Dorin and Honorable Minister. Thank you very much, sir and ma, for joining us today. And to all the people that also joined on this session, thank you very much for giving out of your time to listen to us talk. And till the next time that we bring you another wonderful detail about the space industry, I'd like to say thank you and have a wonderful day.